Hello, everybody, and welcome to round 4 of the iRacing Lockdown Challenge, powered by One World Charity here on Apex Racing TV. I am Tyler Newitt. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Sam Fitzpatrick. And doing the production for us today, running the cameras behind the scenes, doing everything that allows us to have a successful broadcast is the excellent Marco Barbanera. We come from the high banks and high horsepower of the V8s around Daytona last time to a completely different track in a completely different country with completely different cars. It is the GTE class cars here at the Twin Ring Motegi circuit in Japan, or virtual Japan, of course. But Sam, what are you looking forward to today with these GTE cars? We got a lot of a lot of variety here by virtue of some of the rules of the series. I think we're going to see some great competition just from watching practice times. It seems we've got a pretty close field here.
Yeah, absolutely, and some very well-established drivers as well. Real high-quality driving, I'm sure, is going to be in store for us tonight. And yeah, really looking forward to this one. Motegi, it's a circuit that divides opinion. I'm not a big fan of it. Fortunately, though, we're not at night, which is massively overused around this circuit. Fortunately, though, we're in the day. We can see the cars, which is lovely. And usually, from my experience, the races are actually pretty good around this circuit, particularly in the middle part of the track, through the sweepers and then through those hairpins. You can really go side by side for pretty much half of the entire lap, which is absolutely fantastic. There you can see Moritz Lohner on the top of the championship after 3 rounds of the season, but it is very close. Look at those DB1 Triton racing cars right down his right behind him, and also Dominic Stabe, his teammate, still with an outside chance of winning the championship. Remember, a couple of races per meeting, and so that championship tonight can change very quickly. So still very big for these drivers. We're expecting the season to last for 6 rounds, could even be a 7th round potentially. So the drivers have really got to put in some good results right now.
Absolutely. It was a couple of runner-up finishes last time out for Moritz Lohner of William Esports. One very close and one very far. We had a absolute photo finish in the first race in which he lost by just a whisker to Dominic Blazier. But of course, in the second race, due to some carnage on the opening laps, unfortunately, Mirko Bortolotti ran away with it just a little bit. Of course, you know, Mirko's super talented in the real world and the virtual world as well. He's an Audi factory driver for this past season, going back to Lamborghini, where he won a couple of races, big races around the world in his previous time as a Lamborghini factory driver. Currently, as we are just rounding out practice, we can see both Moritz Lohner and Mirko Bortolotti near the top, but not quite there. It's Dominic Stabe, as you mentioned, teammate to Moritz Lohner, who is currently leading the field. Of course, as soon as I say that, Marcin Skripczak jumps to the top in his Ford GT. So lots of variety. I did mention we do have a good variety. There's a really interesting rule in this league, which I think is awesome because it promotes somewhat of a variety of selection within classes. It's that all of these drivers are in teams of 2 if they have a teammate. There's a maximum of 2 drivers per team, but for the GTE rounds of the championship, the 2 drivers in the same team are not allowed to have the same car choice. So quite the opposite to what you would find normally in the real world or even in the virtual world, where you'd want teammates in the same car to help each other with feedback and setup and everything like that. Instead, what you have here is teammates who are forced to drive different cars. So currently it's a Ford on top ahead of 2 Porsches. There's a Ferrari in 4th, a Corvette in 6th, the BMW in 7th. So pretty much every manufacturer who is in the GTE class in iRacing is represented up near the front of the field, as we see somebody going for a spin there. Really, I think it's a great sort of balancing tool because you can't rely on your teammates for help with the car that you're driving. Similarly, the car and track combinations aren't announced until a couple of days before the race to limit practice time. So a lot of effort being taken to keep this field close, and looking at the times right now, I would say they're succeeding, Sam.
Absolutely, I've got strong feelings about this rule of the different cars for different for each team, because for us commentators it makes it a lot easier. We don't have to have the same liveries on the cars. Obviously some teams have got multiple team entries, and so there will be a bit of confusion there, but it's so much easier to distinguish between the drivers when they're running completely different cars. So lovely work from the organisers. Yeah, I love what you've done there, and it is cool to have so many unique attributes to this championship. I mean, this is my first round covering it, but the reverse grid format, that is something that we're familiar with on Apex Racing TV. In fact, very similar format to the ARL GT Championship, just a little bit shorter of a second race list. But also the qualifying format with the 3 lap times that you've got to set. Real high pressure stuff, especially, you know, around some of the circuits that we visit during the season where off tracks are going to be common. If you get an off track on any of your 3 laps, then you're starting from the back, because it's your averaged 3 lap times which decide your qualifying position. And of course, if you pick up one accident, that's your entire quali run gone, because you only get 3 laps to set, and all 3 will be averaged together. So it really is a fantastic format that the organisers have come up with. And yeah, it does look pretty close at the moment. Also, the fact that, of course, it's such a late notice means that the drivers wouldn't have had too much practice around the circuit, albeit some of the more established iRacers in particular will be at an advantage. Because even the real-life drivers who have maybe raced in World Motorsport, this place isn't necessarily visited that often, and for the European drivers and the American drivers, not on many World Championships is this circuit visited. So maybe the sim race will a slight advantage for tonight, but still going to be a good chance for many of the drivers. We're just entering the final couple of minutes of practice, and then we'll be into the qualifying session.
Absolutely, Sam. It's a really interesting point here as well. You know, as you said, it's a track that's not typically visited often by external championships to Japan. Obviously, you know, you see the Japanese series like Super Formula, Super GT make their way to this track with some sense of regularity, but not so much the World Championships. They tend to head towards Suzuka or Fuji for their Japanese stops on their tours. So definitely drivers, even the real world drivers who may be familiar with these cars or with some of the more commonly used tracks on iRacing and in the real world, are going to have a bit of a challenge working their way around this circuit. Obviously, so I should say, while the drivers are notified of the car and track choice with short notice, they are choosing from a pool of tracks which they'll visit all of the tracks over the course of the championship. So while which track they're racing in a given week in a given car is a surprise, the drivers do know which tracks they'll be visiting over the course of the season. So some of the more shall we say drivers who perhaps put in the time to try and win these races may have already done some practice laps around Twin Ring Motegi, just to try and get that little bit of advantage, because they really need it here. You know, it's such for a field with 30 drivers in it, it is unbelievably tight. We saw it at Daytona for sure, where while the cream does rise to the top, you know, you do see the drivers who are quicker in sim racing working their way forward. There is some hectic battling going on in the midfield, and certainly in race number 1, with the knowledge of the reverse grid coming into race number 2, there's a lot of scrapping for positions going on between drivers on pretty equal pace. So any little advantage that you can get, even with the steps the organizers have taken to limit practice time and practice ability for these drivers, is going to be supremely beneficial for you coming into the various races of the championship. We've just started qualifying. We see Moritz Lehner, one of the first cars on track in his William Esports Chevy Corvette C8R, just working his way around the first few corners of the track within kind of the confines of the oval here at Twin Ring Motegi. They'll work their way out from under the oval portion of the track and into the somewhat extended version of the Grand Prix course. Obviously, unlike the Daytona road course, which we visited last time out, the oval at Twin Ring Motegi is not used as a part of the road course, simply The infield portion of the oval contains a portion of the Grand Prix road course that the drivers are working their way on as Laner works his way around the corner and up the hill. I know you said you're not a huge fan of Twin Ring Motegi, Sam, but personally, I think it's a really excellent track. It's got kind of everything you want in a track. You know, you have elevation changes. You go quite steeply downhill here, as we see from that camera angle. Actually, that's an excellent camera angle to see these cars working their way downhill. I think probably the only downside is, like a lot of the Japanese tracks on the service, it can be very slippery. But that's something these drivers are all going to have to deal with today, as Laner will come across the line and start his first flying lap. Remember, as Sam said, these drivers are going to have to set 3 lap times without incident to get an average for their starting position. So very easy to just make a little mistake and throw away your entire qualifying effort.
Yeah, it sure is. I'm going to use a strange analogy here, but it kind of reminds me of, I think in London 2012, one of the many gold medals that we won. Unfortunately, not as many as you Americans, but we won our fair share. I think we won a horse one, and I think in that you got to absolutely perfect the run. I mean, you can't make a mistake. If you make like one mistake, then you get like deducted 5 points or something, and that's it. And it's really tense when you're watching it. And personally, I'm not a fan of equestrian, but it is very tense when you're watching it. And it's kind of similar here, where you got to push it on the limit. You can't obviously just go mega slowly round the track and just make sure that you get a run in. But if you do just overstep it slightly and make one mistake, that's it. And the chances of you even being anywhere near the front of the order are over. If you pick up one instant, then that is it for you. So it is a lot of pressure, and I wonder if maybe the drivers in this round for the championship maybe starting to get used to it and how to kind of deal with this. I wonder if they've maybe tried a few practice runs to really nail this 3-lap stint, because not quite a qualifying, not quite a normal qualifying, but it will be very important. We'll try to keep you up to date with what the times are as they come across the line. I believe we will still get times up on our screen for their best lap time on our live timing software, so we'll be able to kind of tell you roughly what the times are at the moment. And in fact, I am wrong, because no, all the times will come in after the 3 laps, and you probably knew this, to be honest, Tyler, and I should have consulted you on that. But this is quite tense. We have no idea what's going on. We just have to see these bright lights at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, I've been watching the sector times. Obviously, as you mentioned, Sam, we're not going to get lap times until we start to see averages come across. But as far as purple sector times, they are all being set at the moment by Dominic Stabe, who we're watching right now for Williams Esports, driving the Porsche. Now, another interesting facet of this championship is, while the supercar rounds run on a fixed setup, the GTE rounds run on an open setup. So there is the ability for these drivers to tailor these cars and the setups to their driving style. So while obviously as that is Marcus Fallman, who has gone wide, that's going to throw a wrench into his qualifying chances. But while you get a lot of you don't get a lot of practice time to set these cars up optimally, I guess I would say, because you see that a lot in iRacing by virtue of the somewhat unlimited practice time compared to the real world. You get a lot of effort from drivers and teams to set their cars up to somewhat of an optimal setup. Instead, what these drivers have is just an opportunity to tailor these setups to their driving styles. So while you may see a driver going quick in a Porsche like Dominic Stabe is right now, it doesn't actually mean that he is setting the Porsche is the right car for this track and he's got the optimal setup. Instead, it just means that he's found a setup that suits his driving style well and is helping him around this course comfortably. So just watching his second lap there, he didn't match any but one of his sector times, so he did set one more purple sector through sector 3. Everybody else somewhat in the green, but nobody is touching the purple except for Dominic Stabe. So Obviously, from second on back, I don't know how it's going to shake out once the times start rolling in, but I would not be shocked at all to see the number 111 Porsche jump to the top of the board once we start seeing times roll in.
Yeah, certainly looking pretty strong at the moment. I'm not seeing anyone tow back to the pits apart from Victor Smolvark, who I don't think actually ever went out on circuit. So Victor won't be setting a time, and also Giuliano Roman Nulo as well, just starting his first lap. So I doubt he will have time to set a lap. But everyone else seemingly still going, which indicates that they haven't picked up a 1x. Otherwise, certainly I would be too angry to continue driving if I picked up a 1x. Obviously, my strategy here would just be to. I know I was using the equestrian analogy earlier on, where you got to go for it. I'd just I'd just hang back and just make sure I got the 3 laps in. But we'll see. These probably 25 drivers will probably all get their laps in. Seems like certainly the 96 is still pushing. That was pretty much on the limit though for Kazmarek. That hairpin. You mentioned earlier on how you're a big fan of this circuit. A few too many hairpins for myself as Lona goes to the top. But yeah, so many hairpins. Turn 1 is a hairpin, turn 2 is a hairpin, turn 3 is a hairpin. Got 3 hairpins near the end. A few too many for myself, but it's still not too bad. I do like the S's in the middle. Stave goes to the top as you were predicting. Very strong for Dominic, and well, we wait for the other drivers to try to improve, but at the moment, the top 2 keeping in their position, Stave and Lona, looking very strong.
Yeah, and what a margin from Stave back to his teammate Laner at the top by 0.8 of a second. Even over the course of 3 laps, that's a pretty substantial difference in average lap time. So he led practice. He's currently leading qualifying as we see Maximilian Paul jump into second and cut that deficit just a little bit. But Dominic Stave, if I had to start picking a winner right now, I think I know who my money's going to be on, certainly for race number 1, as Mirko Bortolotti jumps into second, but doesn't do much to cut into the gap from our qualifying provisional pole sitter at the moment, Dominic Stave. We see some cars still completing their laps. About half the field has set their lap times as it stands, and I'm showing 5 or 6 cars who will not set a lap time as they've completed their runs, but either had an off track somewhere or for one reason or another weren't able to set 3 average lap times. But cars still rolling in with lap times. We see we're watching Alex Ellis now, just finishing his 3rd lap. We'll see where he jumps into.
Wonder if that was invalidated.
I think it must have been because he did not jump onto the board. So the only drivers I'm still showing on track, Marcin Skripczak, who just completed his 3rd lap and jumps to second. Ooh, that's a good run by Skripczak, who was very quick in practice as well. He's about 1/4 of a second off Dominic Stave, but that's still a decent lap time. Now Giuliano Romagnuolo, who you mentioned got a late start to qualifying. I don't think he's going to be able to complete his 3 laps before the time runs out here. Same thing for Michael Bisuch, who is just now completing his 2nd lap, if my timing screen is correct. And we don't see a time there from him. So I'm not sure how much additional time after the 10 minutes these drivers will get, but both Romagnuolo and Bisuch are going to need just a little bit extra in order to complete their laps. Of course, that is, I should mention, that is Michael Bisuch, who has not completed a qualifying run. The Bisuch you see on your screen is Fabio, who is his son. I was just looking at the driver information for those 2. Michael and Fabio are racing together for, and I just lost their team name. Where is it? Adrenaline E-Motorsport. There it is. Oh, and we have the results on the screen, so they won't get a chance to finish their runs. But Michael is 50 years old, racing with his son Fabio, who is 16 for Adrenaline E-Motorsport. So good run for Fabio there in 6th place for Adrenaline E-Motorsport, as I mentioned. But it's Dominic Stave who sets the pole time in his Porsche for Williams Esports, a 144.4. That is mighty quick, ahead of Marcin Skripczak for DV1 Triton Racing, who have been strong all season. Mirko Bortolotti in 3rd. ahead of his teammate Maximilian Paul. Moritz Lehner for Williams Esports couldn't quite match his teammate Dominic Stabe. He'll start in 5th alongside Fabio Bisuch. Ben Green for GazX starts in 7th alongside Niels Langeveld. Pyotr Jagodinsky will start in 9th, and Ben Benagel will round out your top 10. Nick Deisler starts 11th ahead of Daniel Kramsky in 12th. Elvis Spinello will start in 13th ahead of Jan Lintz. Andrea Amen will start in 15th ahead of Jesko Kaczmarek. Gustavo Xavier starts in 17th ahead of Nick Wustenhagen. Roberto Pancaldi will start in 19th, and Marcus Fallman will round out your top 20. Lucas Eidelberg was the last driver to set a 3-lap average. He will start in 21st. Everyone there on back did not get 3 complete laps, so Marco Nessi starts 22nd ahead of Victor Smolarczyk. Giuliano Romagnuolo, who we saw unable to complete his 3 laps, starts in 24th. Alex Ellis will line up in 25th ahead of Steven Ebert. Martin Stadman will start 27th ahead of Michael Bisuch, who we saw unable to complete his laps as well. Stefano Pellegrino will line up 29th alongside Stefan Hiller. Clemens Schmid starts 31st ahead of Alex Fontana in 32nd. And that is your field. So we've got the field rolling. Skripchak is pulled in front of the pace car there. He's going to have to get back in line before this race goes green. Sam, who's your pick for race number 1?
I mean, Dominic looks so strong, didn't he, in qualifying? He's got to be the common sense choice, I think, but Skripchak might well be able to put him under pressure. Maybe he'll force a mistake.
And just want to remind you folks that we are running for charity here, the One World Charity. The donation link is on your screen as we get ready for the green flag. Please go ahead and donate if you can. And Dominic Stabe is off. He got a great jump there on Skripchak, who is trying to force, I believe that's Mirko Bortolotti, to the inside. And he will get the jump on Mirko. Can Mirko's teammate Maximilian Paul get ahead of him? No, he slots back in 2nd and is now under fire from Moritz Lehner. Bortolotti, though, had a great run out of turn number 1, and he goes back on Skripchak for 2nd place, and he's going to get that job done as they head round. Here now is Bisuch and Green going after it, as Moritz Lehner is dropping back quickly through the field. He started in 5th, got up as high as 4th, but now has dropped back to 6th and is under fire to lose even more positions, though now he goes back on Bisuch for 5th place as they head under the tunnel and out from the oval section of the track. Quite a bit of action, but everything looks pretty clean, I have to say. No heavy contact or crashes, which is good to see. Work their way through the... Oh! As soon as I say that, Mirko Bortolotti gets a nudge and goes for a spin. Thanks to Marcin Skripchak, he will drop just outside of the top 10 in 11th place as he gathers himself back up. Works his way now on Deisler for 9th position. So Bortolotti quick to recover from that... Can't really call it.
Big crash behind.
Yep, you are absolutely right. The track is almost completely blocked there for a moment. We've got a number of drivers involved who I will tell you their names once everything gets sorted out. So, Jesko Kaczmarek has lost a lot of positions. Nick Wustenhagen, Gustavo Xavier, I believe, involved in that as well. A number of drivers. Oh, there's a little nudge from Lehner on Maximilian Paul. In the Corvette, just as they head back towards the start-finish straight. That was close to contact if there wasn't any, but everyone continues on there. It's Dominic Stabe, who's now opened up almost a 3-second gap in 1 lap out front as everybody has scrapped behind him. So definitely Dominic Stabe just steering clear of the mess by virtue of being in front of it. Elvis Spinello was also involved in that accident. He is reset to pit lane.
Yeah, a remarkable start there for Stabe. He just managed to get away from it, as you say. But yes, Skripchak going for the move during the yeses. I talked about how you can go side by side. It looks really like a fun battle between those two. Didn't quite end up too well. But Bortolotti back up into 8th position now. He's ahead of Bunnegal, who I think has a popular meme on the back of his car. From what I could see, my eyesight is pretty good, I think. Yes, he's running in 9th, Deisler running in 10th place, but it's pretty close really from everyone. from second place all the way down into the latter stages of the top 10. They are all in a queue, but overtaking won't necessarily be too easy for the drivers. Bonagal actually dropping down the order. That is a big shame for him. There he is. That looks like a self-spin. He didn't seem to be under too much pressure from what we were watching beforehand. And unfortunately, he's dropped down to 22nd place. Took top 25, I believe, get reversed. So, you know, as long as you stay in that top 25, you're going to have a good chance in race 2.
Right, you are, Sam. Top 25 get the reverse, but only the top 20 score points. So you're going to want to be kind of in that top 20 to score some points for your team if you can. Giuliano Romagnuolo has reset to the pit lane. We see him dropping back through the order now just by virtue of the way iRacing works. It essentially sends him forward a lap as he tows back to pit lane. That's why you see his name at the top of the timing charts. But he has reset back to pit lane and is dropping back quickly. I also saw Lucas Eidelberg in his Ford has had some trouble on track. He is dropping through the order as well. Oh, that's might have just been a lockup up ahead because I didn't see any cars off. No, I think it's Ben Green who has gone off there. Because suddenly he has dropped outside of the top 10 down to 15th. Oh, there were 3 wide for a moment there into turn number 5. They got it all. Oh, goodness. That is Skripchek getting all sorts of squirrely after a nudge from Bisuch behind him in the BMW. This group is going at it. And all it's doing is allowing Dominic Stape to absolutely run away with this race at the moment. But from second on back is just an absolute train of cars, including Mirko Bortolatti, who's caught up to the end of this group, and now Jagodinski has gone wide in his Ford, and he is going to just barely keep it out of the wall, but lose an absolute ton of positions.
Yeah, and there's Bisuch having to defend again. It's great to see a replay of what happened to whoever the driver was who went off the circuit earlier on in the lap. It'd be great to see a replay of that one as Bisuch again having to go defensive hold on to that one at least.
So here's Ben Green, who we believe was the driver who went off. So he wasn't the one who made the big cloud of smoke, but he had his own incident and just braking on the curb, went for a spin, locked up the tires over that curb. Is not something you want to do because he has now dropped all the way back to 20th place, so just on the border of the point scoring positions. He'll be in a nice reverse for race number 2, but that's not really where you want to be for sure. As we see Bortolatti on his charge back through the field, working his way up to 6th place around Langeveld. That is done and dusted by the time they head into turn number 3 here, the scene of Ben Green's incident that we just saw on replay. So Bortolatti clearly has some pace as he's worked his way back through this field. We see a battle now for 11th place. This is Andrea Ema, who is holding off the Porsche of Martin Statman for now. Statman, one of those drivers who did not get 3 qualifying laps set, so he is actually up 15 positions from his starting place on the grid and looking for more as we now see a bit further back. That's Pellegrino going for a move on Fallman, but instead he's going to lose out on a spot to Hiller and potentially another to Ben Green, who is working his way back through the field. Ben Green and Pellegrino are, I'm not sure if they're on the same team as far as the championship concerned, but both GazX racing drivers, so part of the same group of teams. But at the moment, Ben Green not able to get by his teammate. There he goes now on Pellegrino, back into 18th place. And there you see Ben Vinegal, who also had incident earlier, working his way back through the field. So a lot of drivers on recovery drives can make for messy work in the midfield, as we see people who, on pace, think they should probably be further up the field and sometimes get a little aggressive as they work their way past drivers they want to get by.
Yeah, because it almost feels like a race to this because we've got so many drivers out of position. Oh, and that's another driver out of position, and that is Hiller and Green again. Now, was that Green being perhaps a bit too aggressive down into one of the many hairpins around this circuit? We've seen plenty of offs, particularly in the wets in MotoGP at that corner. I think like Rossi went off there like 10 years ago or something, not quite sure. There was the move, and maybe that was a bit late there from Green, who slowed up. Maybe even wanted to adjust the position, but lost so much position to his rival. Oh, and now that's Green again, and it's Bisuch involved in this one, and Smolovich as well. So a few good drivers getting involved, and Green is way off the circuit now. Let's see what happened here. A bit slower on the apex, and the Ferrari kind of goes through him, and then a couple of cars behind in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And not Ben Green's day. I did want to say, it looked in the first incident we saw where Hiller went around that Hiller pulled to the outside to try and make a move on the Porsche in front of him, and I think Ben Green thought that position on the inside of the corner was going to be open, and Hiller thought otherwise, which involved them coming together. So by my book, that's a racing incident, but obviously we only saw the one angle, so it is tough to say. But Green has reset to the pits, so he's not going to be one of the drivers getting the reverse grid or scoring points in this race number 1. He'll drop through the order pretty quick. But Dominic Stave is not dropping through the order pretty quick. He is absolutely dominating this race. You can see the gaps he's pulled over. Well, that's Green listed in second, who obviously has had some trouble and reset to the pit lane. There we go. Those are the gaps that he has pulled over Maximilian Paul, who now sits in second place. When you're pulling somewhere between 3/4 of a second and 3 seconds a lap, you can run pretty comfortably, I have to say, and it certainly looks like Dominic Stave is. He's up to 8.5 seconds over Maximilian Paul, as we've got another big wreck, I believe. Or no, I'm sorry, this is just the drivers who reset to the pit lane, dropping back through the order. So my mistake. I saw the timing screen changing rapidly and thought we had another incident, but it was just drivers going by the pit lane. As we see side by side here for third place, or rather for second place, that is Lehner alongside Maximilian Paul. Oh, Paul was just barely clear there. He certainly cleared himself on the nose of Moritz Lehner. And Marcin Skripczak wants a part of this as well in his Ford. He wants to get back up to second place where he started, despite his contact with Bortolotti, who has dropped down to 17th. I'm not sure what happened to Mirko. As we see a car around in the background there, and there is Mirko, so definitely some more incidents happening back here.
This is Pancaldi. He's got involved in this one. I think, are they teammates? No, not teammates. Oh, again, just the driver's a little bit slow on the apex, and the driver behind, of course, not with a big gap, and have little time to react and, slow up themselves. Back on their way now. We've got a few drivers into the pits. We've got Schmidt into the pits, Skir back into the pits, and also B-Such as well to make their pit stop. I must confess, I did not know there were going to be a pit stop.
Yes, yeah. So these, I should have mentioned that, Sam, and it has clued me into what happened to Mirko Bortolotti, because he didn't have an incident. He just made his pit stop early. So these drivers are limited on fuel in both of these races, so there is a pit stop in both of the races. We saw it at Daytona, a lot of drivers waiting kind of till the last minute to make their pit stop. Similarly here, I think you're going to see a lot of drivers waiting later, but we do see a number of guys making these early stops. So Alex Ellis, Clement Schmid, Michael B-Such, all in, Alex Fontana as well. Number of drivers making their first pit stops. Marcin Skripczak is the highest running of drivers who have stopped already in 11th, ahead of Fabio B-Such. Mirko, as I mentioned, stopped a lap earlier than these guys, along with Daniel Kramsky and Peter Jagodinsky. So a number of drivers stopping probably at the beginning of the window, you'd have to believe. Not sure that's going to play out, as we saw Mirko stuck back in traffic and nearly caught up in an incident there. But certainly doing what they can to try and run a different strategy and make up positions in the pits rather than on track.
Yeah, if you have an issue and you drop to the back, it's certainly the wise thing to do to come into the pits and get a load of places with the undercut rather than having to do it on circuit, especially if you've been involved in an incident due to trying to make your way up through the order by overtaking drivers. So no, that's smart driving. I wonder if Lona would be worth coming into the pits. He does look faster than Maximilian Paul, but he is leaving it a little bit longer and leaving himself potentially vulnerable to an undercut from those drivers who have already come into the pits, but they may well get stuck in traffic themselves. So maybe this will work out well for Lona. Just half a tenth slower on that last lap of the driver ahead. They've now got 3 seconds to the car behind of Langeveld. Got a really good battle at the moment between Wurstenhagen, Kramski, Hiller, and Jagodinski, and also actually Smolodrich as well involved in that one. So that's the battle from 17th down to 21st. You can see how tight all of these drivers are at the moment. One of them, I believe, is a back marker, or I may have got that one wrong. Yeah, I think so. But here is Versenhagen. Actually, he's going to be overtaken, it seems, right here by Kramski. Two teammates just changing round, or they need to make sure they don't lose any extra places, and that is what has happened. Hiller moves past, and now it was nearly much worse for Versenhagen, and it's got a lot worse for Smolchuk and Ellis, who have come together. It's very tight around that section of the circuit, really narrow, and at high lows the drivers just making a little bit of contact and sent them spinning around.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the back marker in there was Elvis Manello, who currently runs 29th. But yeah, so a couple of drivers in there had already made their stop, which is why I think you saw the Motul cars change position pretty readily. Daniel Kramski was the driver who had already made his stop, working his way back forward. So I think his teammate happy to let him go there. But you mentioned about the undercut, Sam, and I'm not sure how effective it'll be, because it's my understanding that the GTE cars don't take tires at the same time they take fuel.
Yep.
And given it's just a short fill up here for these cars, since they are fuel limited, not enough time to justify taking tires for the vast majority of these drivers. I mean, maybe if you're somebody who's already had an incident and you've got nothing left to lose, you take some tires and see if you can work your way forward for a reverse grid. But as far as the undercut is concerned, the only drivers I could see it paying off for are drivers who take themselves out of a battle to put themselves in clean air, which I'm not sure how many of these drivers that's going to be the case for. We saw Mirko Bortolotti was one of the first drivers to pit, but he has come out quite a ways behind Marcin Skripczak, Fabio Bisuch, the other drivers who have made an early stop. Those two drivers, I should say, are in a bit of clean air. Skripczak is some 6 seconds behind Jan Lintz, who has not made a stop yet. So perhaps Skripczak is playing this well, although he would have needed a massive undercut to close any sort of gap to Dominic Stave. But that said, he may be able to set himself ahead of Maximilian Palmeritz, Laner, that battling group, if they keep up pressuring each other, while these two are able to run a race without any sort of dirty air in front of them. So we'll have to see. Obviously, not everybody has made their stop yet. We're still waiting on at least the top 8, I believe, and a number of drivers throughout the field as well have not made a stop. But the top 8 are the drivers in contention who have made their first, their only pit stop of race number 1 yet.
Yeah, and Skripczak actually putting in some good lap times recently, so he was 3/10 faster a couple of laps ago. We'll see what lap times are this time. Paul, to be fair, gets him better, 45.5 on that last time round. Let's see what Skripczak does across the line. Oh geez, the line comes up late. 45.3, so 2/10 of a second faster. So I think at the moment Skripczak is just ahead of Paul and Lone. I think he came into the pits pretty much even with them. I think Paul and Lona have gone so far that they're just trying to open up that gap. They should be able to come out ahead of Bisuch, however. So it'll be very close between those four, as it was before the pit stops. Statman has gone off the circuit, and that's a shame for Statman, who had been putting in a good drive, managed to avoid most of the incidents. And there he is now, getting back onto circuit. He's got Jan Lintz right on his tail, and Statman is straight away covering the middle of the circuit to fend off any attempted move. So we go back to live pictures, and that is good defense there from Statman. Lintz might go for the dive up into the left-hander. He has a look, but just backs out of it. And then you go to these next couple of very slow speed corners. A flat circuit this on the most part. There's a gentle gradient at parts as well, and I guess you got quite an elevation change at the end of this straight that the drivers are just moving on to. Yep, accelerating down here. and really easy to lock up the brake on the inside. But Stepman seemingly just putting up a big enough of a gap, because still need to make a pit stop to these two guys. And we've still got about 2/3 of our drivers yet to make their pit stop.
Yeah, now Sam, you mentioned the pit deltas, Scriptcheck putting in some good laps. We are fortunate in our timing software to have the pit lane time for each of the drivers, and it seems to be for just about everybody around 32 seconds. So if you look at that and translate it, obviously the pit entry here is a bit shorter, so you do save some time on pit entry, so it would probably not be quite as much as 32 seconds, which is the total pit delta. But if you just straight up apply that to the timing tower, to that kind of second place group of Paul and Lehner, as we see a number of drivers a bit further back, like Langeveld and Eamon. But if we specifically look at Paul and Lehner and just put 32 seconds on their times, and the Scriptcheck and Bisuch are going to be well clear of that group. In fact, they're more likely going to come out around the group of Xavier, Deisler, Bortolotti, that group. If those pit delta times are representative, obviously, you know, it's not the track, so it's not going to be exact. But just gives us a decent reference of where those drivers are going to come out. As Dominic Stabe has made his way down pit lane, I have to believe Stabe would have stayed out as long as humanly possible. So I would imagine we are right at the end of the window for these drivers.
Yeah, maybe Loner's been able to save an extra lap. No, or can he get it stopped? That was tight, wasn't it? I guess with the pit lane time, though, what you got to remember, of course, that's the overall pit lane time. Cuts to the corner, nice work there from Loner. So that's the total pit lane time, not necessarily the loss, because of course you still have to drive down the pit lane. Sorry, you still have to drive down the pit straight. So I guess driving down the pit straight maybe 8 seconds or so. So if it's 32, then maybe 24 seconds, something like that. For the loss. But then, as you mentioned, you know, you got the pit lane entry, which is very tricky. Stable already out. Loner versus Skirt Patch, and Skirt Patch is just ahead then. Where is Bisuch? Is Bisuch even up to 3rd place? No, he's not. And it was a poor pit stop then for Paul, who must have sped on pit entry. I can only imagine. We saw him come into the pits just behind from Loner's perspective, and Paul is having his points taken away from him right now. He's been stationary for up to 40 seconds. This is a massive penalty that he is suffering at the moment. You can see that car is on the ground. He's not taking tyres or anything, and I can only imagine that he's missed the he must have just sped, because his pit lane entry line looked very good.
If I can interject, Sam, it could not even, it might not even be speeding. As we see here, we'll get a great view. Yeah, you're right. I was going to say that the pit entry lines are extremely strict at Twin Ring Motegi, and I've run afoul of them before, because and the penalty applied for an unsafe pit entry is extreme. It's in the nature of around 40 seconds, but as you mentioned, it did look like a clean entry from Maximilian Paul, so the only reasonable explanation is that he sped on the pit lane, perhaps coming into his pit box. So unfortunate, as he now finds himself in 16th place. I was going to say 71st place, but that's his number. There are not 71 drivers in this field. He is 16th place right now, but that is still 12 spots down from where he started. Similar troubles for his teammate Mirko Bortolotti, whose early pit strategy did not pay off, as he finds himself 10 spots down from his starting position of 3rd place. He is in 13th here, trying to get by Marco Gabriele Nessi for 12th place. And there are a number of cars within reach for him, but he is going to need to make that move pretty quick. As we see Ben Bienagel, the last car to make his pit stop, he managed to stretch it for an extra lap, but he is going to drop down the order now, already showing 13th, and he's likely going to drop further as these cars cycle through.
Oh, Loner has had an off. That is very uncharacteristic. I'm trying to catch up to the 2nd place man of Skirt Patch, and it has not worked out for him. You can see he was maybe just in draft range, really pushing hard, very close to the grass on the entry already, and then dips the wheel onto the grass mid-corner, and fortunate not to do a full 180. And it's Bisuch who has been quite quiet in this race, but he's picked up on the errors from Lona and Paul, and he's up into third position, so nice job from him, albeit Lona might be able to get pretty close to him by the end of the race. I think B-Such will have enough on him. Just a word on Bortolotti as well, we were riding on board with him. It looked like he had big damage to Bortolotti. And of course, these guys got one faster there. If you take your early pit stop, then you're really leaving yourself vulnerable for the rest of the race, if you take your faster pair, obviously, at that point, because then you won't have a faster pair for the rest of the race, as Nessie moves ahead of Kramsky. That was a nice move, past the back marker, used the back marker to his advantage, and Kramsky up into 11th. Apologies, Nessie up into the top 10, which is another point for his tally. Might be overtaken on the brakes, but he just about looks alright. Top 6 positions all looking pretty calm now in that regard. Just a couple of jewels further down the order, which still needs to be decided in this first race before, of course, we reverse the grid by 25. And at the moment, it would be Pancaldi on pole position. You could be a little bit of a threat. Pancaldi already with issues in this race, very much out of position, as are many of the drivers in these latter places. But at the moment, he would take reverse grid pole.
Absolutely, Sam. And I just want to take a moment to mention, everybody, the link has been up there for the whole broadcast, but if you haven't yet, we are racing for charity here today. In fact, we are racing for charity through this whole series. The One World Charity, a great cause. So if you have the opportunity and you haven't yet, or even if you have and you'd like to donate again, follow the PayPal link that you see at the top of your screen and go ahead and give what you can. That's why we're here. To help out a good cause and to enjoy some sim racing with a purpose. It's always nice to me to be able to do some sim racing that isn't just, for my own ego. So anybody who if you feel so inclined, please go ahead and donate to the local charity at the link that you see on your screen. As we see Marco Gabriele Nessie, who has had a spin all on his own, just carried a little bit too much speed there, perhaps locked up the rears a bit. No harm, no foul as far as damage is concerned, but he's going to drop a few positions. You had mentioned he was on his way forward, having gotten up to 10th place, but now finds himself in 12th.
And that was Kramsky, did a good job of avoiding, just had to lift out of the throttle ever so slightly. Managed to get his way through. White flag already. And we are going to get all 15 laps in, and Dominic Save absolutely dominating this race. We're going to help his championship charges, especially as a couple of his championship rivals haven't had a particularly good round. It's putting him in a good position for race 2, where it could easily go all wrong. We have seen plenty of incidents in this race 1, so it will be tricky to get a good result in race 2, but I still think he's going to be one of the favourites for that race, frankly, because he's going to have 35 minutes to make his way up through the order, and at least in my experience of reverse grid races, 35 minutes is enough time for these very, very quick drivers to recover 20-odd places.
For sure, and as you mentioned, it's going to be very helpful to Dominic's championship chances. He's actually had a bit of a struggle in the championship so far, finishing out of the points at the first round at Spa. So he sits in 5th place, but some 40 points off of his teammate Moritz Lehner, who leads the standings. So this will be a big help to him, even with Lehner finishing in 4th. You just obviously want to rack up as many points as you can. It'll set him back on the reverse grid for sure, but with the pace we've seen today, I would be surprised if he's not up in contention for the win by the time they finish race number 2. But right now we're finishing race number 1, or at least Dominic Stabe is. We're going to have to count off the seconds as Marcin Skripczak comes across the line in 2nd place, but a commanding victory for Dominic Stabe. It'll be Fabio B-Such who rounds out the podium in his BMW, so 3 different manufacturers in the top 3. In fact, it's 4 different manufacturers in the top 4 as Moritz Lehner crosses the line in 4th in his Corvette with a bit of a smoke show for everybody. Here we see Jagodinsky just barely holding off Martin Statman. He defends to the inside. I think he's going to be all right, even with that late timing line, as you mentioned. He does indeed hold on to 7th place. Now we jump back to the battle for the back end of the reverse grid. This is Smolarczyk and Lintz, I believe. No, I'm sorry, Wustenhagen and Smolarczyk going at it. Nick Wistenhagen driving the Motul Corvette in 21st place. This is Victor Smolicek, who, as we saw, didn't set a qualifying time. He's in the Ferrari. Here is going to be your likely pole sitter for race number 2. In fact, he is going to be your pole sitter for race number 2 because the drivers from 26 on back have already taken the checkered flag. Roberto Pancaldi in his Porsche. Not a great race number 1, down 6 spots from where he started. We saw his incident in turn number 5, but it'll work out all right for him in race number 2 with the pole position. We'll see if he can convert that into some solid points as he, as we mentioned, the top 20 score points in race number 1. So no points for race number 1, but a decent starting spot for race number 2, as we will get your results on screen in just a minute. And there they are. Dominic Stabe, your race winner for Williams Esports by nearly 15 seconds, just barely. Marcin Skripczak gets in under the 15-second mark in his DV1 Triton Racing Ford in second place. Rounding out your race 1 podium is Fabio Bisuch. Moritz Lehner for Williams Esports comes home in 4th place with a great points haul for race number 1 for that team. Niels Langeveld rounds out your top 5 ahead of Nick Deisler. Peter Jagodinsky comes home in 7th. Martin Statman comes home 8th ahead of Andrea Amon. Daniel Kramsky rounds out your top 10. We saw a bit of an up and down day for Daniel, but some pit strategy helped him move forward towards the end, and he gets a top 10 out of it. Mirko Bortolotti had a bit of a struggle, but he will be starting ahead of a lot of the drivers he was on the pace of in the reverse grid in 11th place. Marco Nessi comes home in 12th ahead of Ben Buenagel. Alex Ellis comes home 14th, and Gustavo Xavier rounds out your top 15. We saw the troubles for Maximilian Paul. He comes home in 16th place. Marcus Fallman comes home 17th ahead of Jesko Kaczmarek. And behind them, Stefan Hiller comes home 19th. Alex Fontana rounds out your top 20 and is your last point scorer for the GazX Racing team. Nick Wustenhagen finishes just outside the points, but will get a top 5 starting spot for race number 2. Similarly, Victor Smolarczyk, who we saw having his battle with Nick towards the end of race number 1. Jan Lintz comes home 23rd ahead of Lucas Eidelberg, and as we mentioned, your race 2 pole sitter will be Roberto Pancaldi, who finished 25th in race number 1. Stefano Pellegrino comes home 26th ahead of Clemens Schmid and Giuliano Magnuolo. Then we get into the drivers who had significant trouble today. Elvis Spinello, Michael Bisuch, Ben Green, and Stefan Ebert all finished multiple laps down. Certainly we saw the troubles for Ben Green and Michael Bisuch, Stefan Ebert as well, finishing 14 laps down. He did not make it particularly far in race number 1, but he'll hope for a better race number 2. We've got a bit of time in the warm-up. We'll see if we have any of our race 1 podium drivers. Nope, nobody coming in for an interview yet. We did have some interviews after race number 1 last time, but I think everybody wants to get out there and get some practice laps in. They only get 7 minutes of warm-up here to refresh themselves with the course. Obviously, they've just done a full race, but still, you want to keep as fresh as you can and get as many laps in as you can. If we do have some drivers who jump in to have a chat with us, we will let you know. But at the moment, it's just us, Sam.
It is, and this wonderful SDK Gaming overlay. I've always got to get that in, but do check out SDK Gaming to check out this lovely overlay that we have, and of course it's great for streaming and if you want to do your own broadcasts, and also some nice heads-up display whilst you're racing. Also a little bit of a word as well, of course, for One World Charity. You can check out their website actually, One World Charity .de. I think that should get you to the site, or put One World Charity e.b. That should get you there. But yeah, of course, a charity founded in 2008, and they help children in all different areas. So whether it's education or integration or humanitarian help, they do absolutely everything to One World Charity, and so far they've been able to raise over 10 million euros, which is a massive achievement. And so it would be fantastic if you could donate. Of course, use that link at the top of your screen, and also the link should be at the top of the description as well. So you can click on that, go to PayPal, and donate if you can. Would really appreciate it. All these drivers as well have paid their entry fee, and the entry fees will go towards the charity as well. And also, I believe if a driver does something wrong, one of the penalties that the organisers can give a FIA style is a fine, and that fine will go to the charity as well. So that's a pretty cool aspect from the real world, and it's for a good cause as well. So big thanks to World Charity, and certainly to check them out. But yeah, currently in the warm-up session between races. I wonder if you could get the weather actually up on the screen, just see what time it is, because it is getting a bit late. Oh, I love a brilliant race. Honestly, some of these new race organisers, because we've organised a few new series recently, and they're really good at setting the correct time of the correct date. And on Apex Racing TV, we've hosted so many series which are just so complacent. I think keep it at the default date, May the 15th. But no, good work from the organisers. It's the 29th of December, and so that is why it is so dark, because we are in the Northern Hemisphere, and so it kind of has that weird December early evening type of feel. I know right now in this country it's getting dark at about 4 in the afternoon, and whilst Japan is slightly more south, I can't imagine it's going to be very light by the end of this race. So I think the headlights will be in partial use, at least by the end of the event.
I have to believe you're right there, Sam. It's going to be certainly getting dark towards the end of this race. It'll certainly pose a challenge to these drivers as they navigate their way around a low sun. It's always always an additional challenge in racing in the real world or in the virtual world to race at sunset or sunrise. One of my favorite events to watch in the real world and to race in the virtual world is the Bathurst 12-hour, because you start at sunrise or a little bit before sunrise, and you get the sun like right in your face as you go over skyline, which is just it's so cool and such a fun additional challenge added to the race. So definitely happy that the event organizers are, as you mentioned, Sam, on their toes as far as setting these events up for the right date, and we get a lovely December evening in Japan here, virtual Japan, of course, as we head into the final race of the day, race number 2, and we have just finished the warm-up, so we will be gridding up shortly. It's going to be very interesting. We saw a bit of carnage in the reverse grid at Daytona. Hopefully not the same here today, but certainly it's a possibility. We mentioned there's always kind of that attitude of drivers as they're working their way through the field of, I'm faster than you, I should be able to get through, and sometimes it leads to some carnage. But we have your grid on the screen there. Whoop, and now we lost the grid on the screen there. Sorry.
Come on, Marco.
There is the grid. Thank you, Marco. Marco does an excellent job. We don't give him enough credit. But starting on pole for race number 2, as we mentioned, your 25th place finisher in race number 1, Roberto Pancaldi. Alongside him, Lucas Eidelberg and Jan Lintz starting in 3rd. Victor Smolarczyk will start in 4th place ahead of Nick Wustenhagen and Alex Fontana. Stefan Hiller starts in 7th ahead of Jesko Kaczmarek. Marcus Fallman and Maximilian Paul round out your top 10. Gustavo Xavier will start in 11th ahead of Alex Ellis. Ben Bunagel, as the field starts rolling in the background, starts 13th. Marco Nessi in 14th. Mirko Bortolatti in 15th, going to be one to watch for sure, trying to work his way forward. Daniel Kramsky will start 16th. Andrea Amann will start 17th. Martin Statman in 18th. Piotr Jagodinsky in 19th. Nick Deisler in 20th. Niels Langeveld starts 21st ahead of Moritz Lehner. Fabio Bisach in 23rd. Marcin Skripczak 24th. Your race 1 winner, Dominic Stabe in 25th. Stefano Pellegrino ahead of Clement Schmid, Giuliano Romagnuolo, Elvis Spinello, Michael Bisach, Ben Green, and Stefan Ebert. The field works their way down through the final chicane and onto the pit straight. Pancaldi will control the field in his Porsche. Eidelberg trying to get a run on him there, but Pancaldi holding steady. Now he is gone, and he has played that perfectly as he gets a jump on Eidelberg, and in fact Lintz behind him gets the jump as well in his Ferrari. a bunch of white and red cars, making it a little bit confusing for us here at the front of the field. But it is Pancaldi and Lintz who run away early on. Smolarczyk looking for that third position early here into turn number 3. He's going to have the inside line, but is he going to get it done? Oh, it's very tight through there. Well held by those two drivers to not have any contact, but Smolarczyk completes the pass and moves up into third place. Eidelberg dropping quickly as I see some names dropping down the order towards the back. Stefano Pellegrino. Dominic Stabe, I think, has been involved in something because he has dropped some positions from the start. We'll have to see if we have a replay of that. He doesn't look particularly damaged, but certainly set back behind the field. It's going to be a little bit more difficult now for Dominic Stabe to repeat his race 1 performance.
Yeah, we had B-Such as well drop down the order. I think B-Such finished in 3rd place in race 1, but down to 27th, I think, now, out on track. So not a good start for a couple of our front runners from race 1. Javier has already gained 3 places. Oh, we've got the car at the back, and it's that same corner, which we didn't think there'd be any issues at, and yet 2 race starts and 2 incidents down there. Kazmirak involved in that one. I think Stabe may have had to go off the circuit again as Lintz takes the lead, and that looks a little bit tactical then from the FAC Auto Tech Sim Racing Cars. Oh dear, now they come together.
Oh dear, that was... Oh, Lintz will be kicking himself after that one. He had just taken the race lead, and suddenly he's going for a spin and taking his teammate down with him. That is, oh, absolutely a shame for Lintz. He was doing really well to hold that position, but instead, leading lap number 1 is Victor Smolarczyk. He has a decent gap over Nick Wustenhagen, and this battle for 3rd place between Eidelberg and Hiller. Eidelberg promoted by virtue of that contact we saw between Lintz and what was the other car? Ooh, a little bit of netcode contact there, but or was it Eidelberg involved in that? There's so many red and white cars up front, I can't remember who was who. No, it was Roberto Pancaldi who was involved in that. As we have more contact, that's Skripczak, one of your podium finishers from race number 1, finished in 2nd, but he is now dropped back and he has some damage to the front of that Ford. So lots of contact early on here, and no one has really been super successful working their way forward, except for Mirko Bortolotti, who is up into 4th place. Up from 15th place on the grid. Moritz Lehner has also moved forward a bit. He is into 12th from his 22nd place starting spot. But there now is a move for 5th place. That is Marco Gabriele Messi going ahead of Stefan Hiller. So lots of drivers who we thought would be working their way forward in the reverse grid have actually gone in the other direction. Skripczak is... Sorry, Sam, go ahead.
It's just a spinner in the background for GT. However, I'm not seeing anyone like really stationary. Maybe it was Diesler and Javier. Javier, actually, yeah, that must be Javier because he was running much higher before that, on the outskirts of the top 10. So that is a shame for the Swiss driver there. Yeah, started in 11th place, and there you can see the gains for the drivers. Bortolotti, the big one there. Lona up 11 places. He's done a good job. Romanology as well up 13 places. Lintz down 13 places after taking the lead. And there is Bortolotti in fact already ahead of Itelberg, so he's up into 3rd. And on that last lap, he actually matched Smolarczyk. So they seem to be quite evenly matched in this 20-lap race, which should take us about just under 35 minutes, as these guys really close to one another, or there could so easily be a bowling pin effect down into this corner. And it was Green who outbroke himself, and he had such a good start. He was up 17 places, was Green. And of all the cars, I thought he was going to be the one who did get to stop. In the end, he just couldn't, and he was very lucky not to take another driving round.
I do wonder if he let off the brakes just a little bit and sacrificed himself so as not to cause more trouble there, because he was in the middle of, oh no, that's an, oh. We've got so much going on right here. That was Nessie having trouble. It was, I believe, Romagnuolo in the Corvette who we saw spinning out of turn number 5 and perhaps taking another car with him. This is Eidelberg who has had trouble. Now Ebert's reset to the pits, so we've got 3 cars who have had to take a tow back to pit lane: Eidelberg, Romagnuolo, and Ebert. Still lots going on here, but Mirko Bortolotti is working now on Nick Wustenhagen for 2nd place on track. He is not letting anybody slow him down. He is making himself out to be a bit of a reverse grid master. We saw him with a dominating performance at Daytona in the reverse grid race, and now looking to do the same here, survive the carnage at Twin Ring Motegi and work his way forward. Another guy to keep an eye on, though, is Maximilian Paul. He is up, I believe, to 5th place now with, we just have the driver, no, he's up to 4th place, my mistake. He had set the quickest lap of the race before his teammate Bortolotti did just then, but I think those two guys, ex-drivers, are going to be the ones who we see fighting for this race win once it's all said and done, if they don't have any more trouble working their way forward.
Yeah, sure, looking good for now. I don't really know what happened to Dominic Stave. He's only up 7 places, so he must have been involved in something, but we didn't see anything on screen. Ooh, that was close for Ellis, I think it was. As also Statman, I think, just moving ahead of Pancaldi, who of course did start on reverse grid pole. That's a deep run for Kramsky. Almost goes into the back of Ellis. But yeah, not quite sure what happened further down as Eamon now battling with Lona, and this is quite inevitable. Lona will eventually get past. They both get past Hiller, it seems, right there. But Eamon, I don't think will have any response to Lona. Eamon actually running for the Team 1 World Charity EV car, so I guess we've got to support him if that's the case. So, but he's only half a second ahead, and on that last lap, Lona was 1 second faster, so just a matter of time right there. Smaller chick seems to have a bit of damage. I wonder if he was involved in that first lap incident down at this very corner, because it does seem to be costing it a little bit as well. Very little in each sector, but it adds up over the course of a lap.
I believe you're right, Sam. I think it was that contact with Lintz and Pancaldi that we saw in that corner. He came out the winner there, having not been set back like the other two, but he did collect a bit of damage. Otherwise, his pace, I would say, has been pretty impressive. Normally, we see these drivers who start towards the front of the reverse grid just dropping back relatively quickly, but there is an advantage to having clean air for sure, and he's been able to hold on well here. It's only a matter of time before Mirko gets by, I have to say, but is there he tried to accelerate on the grass there, and that matter of time has come rather quickly as Mirko Bortolotti works his way around the outside, and Smaller Chick, I think, knows his gig is up, and he lets Bortolotti have the position, and I think decided the wise choice would be to tuck in and try and hold on to second place as long as he can. He certainly has, I would say, the pace over Nick Wustenhagen. His next biggest threat is going to be Maximilian Paul, who is closed now to within 1.5 seconds of Nick Wustenhagen behind him. There he is in that red Ferrari, but for the moment, I would say Smaller Chick would be best served to hold station and do his best to hang on to the back of Mirko Bortolotti, who has been rapid.
Yeah, and of course he does get a faster pair, so as long as he gets to the kind of pit stop sequence, he can get all that damage fixed, and he should be a bit faster later on in the race. Eamon and Lona, so Eamon doing a good job, isn't he, keeping behind Moritz Lona, and he is still ahead. So good job there from Andrea, the Swiss driver. As Lona not close enough on the brakes. Hiller as well, doing well to keep up with these guys, albeit they have been battling, so I imagine that's helped him to stay quite so close. But Lona realises that there's an opportunity for some big points here. He could end up today as the highest point scorer of anyone, so he needs to get on with it, and a podium might just be possible with Smaller Chick's damage, and then Wustenhagen, we're expecting to catch up to, and maybe even Paul as well. He could challenge by the end of the race, but Eamon seeing his car in all the right places, and that BMW usually pretty fast down the straights. At least historically, the M8 has been fast down the straights. Maybe that's just keeping him at arm's distance away, as Paul moves up into 3rd place, so back where Paul was before his bad pit stop in race 1.
And Paul reclaimed the fastest lap of the race that time around, so definitely some pace in that Ferrari. He is about 3 seconds behind his teammate Mirko Bortolotti, but if he keeps it up at the pace he's going, he could be there before this race is over, as Lehner makes a move to the inside for 5th. As you were saying, Sam, Eamon doing an excellent job positioning his car defensively, and he may hold on yet a little while longer, but there it goes. So that position, one of those that was kind of bound to change hands eventually, but a valiant defense attempt by Eamon to hang on to it. Now he focuses his efforts on the cars behind of Hiller and Messi.
Amos trying to come back actually into the hairpin, and Luna having to pull some shapes to the braking area. Nessie as well getting ahead of Hiller. Oh, what happens? What happened to Hiller? Well, they're still going, aren't they? But, and it is Nessie who's won out of that one. Fontana is going to take advantage, using that draft on the Porsche ahead to move ahead, and also, let's move there from Ellis to go deep round the outside of car number 8, and he moves himself up into 9th place. A little bit further down. Oh, I totally just got lost there. I thought that was the final corner. It wasn't. As Hiller is very slow. He's picked up a slowdown, it seems, and it drops about 5 places. So he went from he's holding on to a place to. Apologies, he's just continued to lose places. He's lost 3 there, and then he's lost a couple more here.
Yeah, ooh, that was interesting. He just missed his braking point, I think. Carried a whole bunch of speed, and as you mentioned, pick up that slowdown. So Hiller dropping back a bit from his starting position now in 14th place, started in 7th. Not what he wanted to see, but I think what Mirko Bortolotti wants to see is that gap over Maximilian Paul continue to grow. It's pretty much stable at around 3 seconds, maybe grown by a tenth or two that last time through, but Bortolotti not going to be able to run away with this one, I don't think, barring some trouble for Maximilian Paul, but certainly a bit, I would say, comfortable right now, and if Smaller Chick gives Paul any trouble, it's going to do a lot to cement this victory for Mirko Bortolotti. Obviously, we still have pit stops to come in this 20-lap race. The pit stop window seemed to close on around lap 11 last time. I would imagine with the fuel limits it's somewhat similar here. Though we haven't, I don't think we've seen anyone make an early pit stop for fuel. We did see someone in, it was Skripchak in on lap 2 for his mandatory stop. So it is possible that these cars are going to be able to make it quite a bit longer, but I have to believe that Skripchak was likely in for damage repairs more so than for his mandatory fuel stop. As we see Bortolotti, quickest car on track that time by about a tenth and a half over Maximilian Paul, his teammate. We do have some other drivers in the 45 second bracket back through the field, including Moritz Lehner, Eamon and Nessie, both also in that window. Dominic Stabe in the 45s as well. He's up to 12th place, so after his early troubles, getting caught up in the lap 1 incident and then held up in that second lap 1 incident, he's done well to somewhat methodically work his way through the field. He now gets by Kramsky for 11th place, as we see Lehner through on Wustenhagen, and is he able to hold that? Yes, he is. So Moritz Lehner, similarly methodical to his teammate, working his way through this field. He's a bit of a ways back for a chance at the race win, some 8 seconds, but you never know what could happen up front. There could certainly be trouble for Paul or Bortolotti, as Paul sends it in on Smolarczyk, but isn't able to make it stick, although he does have the inside line for this next hairpin, as Sam loves to mention coming up. He unfortunately had to back out there, so not able to make the move on Smolarczyk, and that's cost them about a second to Mirko Bortolotti in the lead. So exactly what Bortolotti wants to see, but not what Maximilian Paul wants to have happen. He would have rather have that position signed, sealed, and delivered already, but he is unable and will have to gather himself back up and make another move on Viktor Smolarczyk somewhat later on.
Yeah, he nearly got the move down. He should just have been faster down the straight a bit. That was a little bit of a compromised exit onto the pit straight. Just the rear end not quite gripping up. Small slide. But he is 3/10 closer than he was on the last lap. As he drives it in a bit deeper through turn 1, so many different lines you can take through there. Maybe not necessarily different lines, but kind of different speeds around each part of the corner. And then of course he can go for a big lunge into turn 2, but every lap that Paul is behind, he's not only losing time to Bortolotti, but he's also allowing Lona to catch up to him a little bit, and also Stave as well could be a worry by the end of this race. But there goes Paul, and this time Smolarczyk not really defending too hard, so Paul up into second place. He's got 5 seconds to catch up to his teammate, and seeing that he doesn't seem any faster, It looks very good for Bortolotti at this point in the race. Good news for Stave is that he's up into 10th place. Only 14 seconds off the lead as well is Stave. And you can see him getting a podium perhaps out of this. I think he might be able to catch up to Smolacek, seeing that he was so quick in race 1, albeit on that last lap he was slightly slower than the race leader. I think that was probably because he was dealing with B-Such, having to get past him as Green, who has had so much pace today. I don't know what Green's results have been likewise in the rest of the season, but he seems like a quick driver, but he's had many incidents tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Ben just having another issue. I think this is going to be near identical to what... No? Okay, I thought he was going to break on the grass there. No, instead he runs wide in the corner. So Ben Green having a lot of trouble today. Unfortunate for him. He, as you mentioned, has been pretty quick, but just not to be as far as race results. I think the key for Dominic Stabe is going to be how quickly he can work through that pack from 5th on back in front of him, because really, once he gets clear of Nessie in 5th place, he'll be able to set the lap times we know he's capable of. But as long as he's kind of trapped within this group of 6 or 7 cars back, kind of all the way back to Bisech in 11th place, he's going to really struggle to have the pace necessary to challenge for a podium. We know he is probably quicker than Smolacek, but is he quicker enough to close that, what's at this point an 8-second deficit in 10 laps? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's maybe half a second faster, isn't he? But yeah, if he was going to close that gap, he'd need kind of 8/10 in order to catch up. Albeit, Smolacek has got damage, so maybe that will hinder him a little bit more. So keep an eye on his times. Of course, you can check out the live timing in the description below, provided by SDK Gaming, as is this lovely overlay. And if you click on that, then it will open up a web page, and you can see the drivers' last lap times, the intervals between the drivers, their best lap times, their pit stop times, their pit stop lap, all of that stuff which you could want. You can check that out in the description below. Ellis up into 8th place then, so he had a little bit of a turbulent race 1, but he's having a good race 2 at 4 places from his start. Is he defending from Statman? I believe he is, because Statman was 3/10 of a second faster on that last lap, and Stabe was a further 3/10 of a second faster on that last lap, and he just set the fastest first sector of anyone, did Dominic Stabe, so he is racing along. And we'll have to deal with these two, but as into the pits comes Ellis, and this is on lap 11, so the drivers are able to go further in this second race than they were in the first race, which I'm a little bit surprised about. But surely we'll see many other drivers come in on this lap, or maybe the next lap if they can stretch it that far.
Yeah, and I do wonder if it wasn't so much drivers kind of reaching. We did see, I don't remember who it was. We did see one driver go 12 laps in the last race. I would believe it was Ben Bunagel. But I don't know what sort of differences there are as far as fuel limits between the two races. Certainly, as this race is a little bit longer, it would make sense to have a slightly higher fuel limit, but I'm also not sure that that's something that iRacing is capable of within sort of the heat race format. I'm not sure, but as it stands right now, only 4 drivers have made their first pit stop on lap 11 here, and I assume see everybody else in on lap 12. We see Nick Wustenhagen there with a few hard-charging cars behind him. We mentioned Eamon, who's had quite a strong defensive performance so far today, and behind them is Dominic Stay making the move on Martin Statman for 8th place, and he's going to have that done, I have to believe, in through the hairpin here. It's not, I don't think, going to be quite as strong as his race 1 performance, is it, for Dominic Stabe, but considering how far he was set back in the early stages of this race, he has done a fantastic job to move himself forward. But he's not going to get an easy ride through the field as Statman fights his way back alongside. We do see Bortolotti in, Lehner in, Nessie and Wustenhagen in. It's only Maximilian Paul and Victor Smolacek who have stayed out so far. So obviously they can stretch it just a little bit farther than everyone else, maybe working their way through traffic. They were saving a little bit of fuel there, but here we see Maximilian Paul working his way down into turn number 3 as the race leader. Don't think the overcut is going to help him close too much on his teammate Mirko Bortolotti. who has come out of the pits still ahead of everyone else who has made their stop. And it seems as if most of the field is in this lap, so not too many cars able to stretch it to lap 13. You hope that Paul and Smolacek can make it, and they didn't just miscalculate their fuel as we see, whoa, Stabe alongside Wissenhagen exiting the pit lane. That's a bit dangerous there. They come out behind Alex Ellis, who has not stopped yet, I don't believe. Martin Statman, who we saw battling Stabe, had a great pit stop as he has come out in 8th place. No, I'm sorry, Ellis has made his pit stop, so that's some positions gained for Alex Ellis in the pits, I have to believe, because Stabe was fighting for 8th place there. Was he an early pit stopper? Or,
one lap earlier was
gotcha.
Ellis.
Yes.
Yeah, you might be right. Not quite sure if he did gain, but he's in 9th place and stayed ahead of Wusterhagen. All the pit stop times pretty similar, albeit Busech and also Statman did take shorter pit stops, maybe banking on one less lap being taken because they were stationed for less than 10 seconds. As Paul, the 2 leaders have come together, and I think that was Paul running out of fuel, and will he even get to the pit lane here? Yeah, he's run out of fuel. As Smolacek, I don't know if maybe Smolacek was being over aggressive there, but dare I say maybe Paul was started across to fend him off. And it's spelt in disaster for the pair of them, and from a guaranteed podium, it's not looking so good for them anymore. And that was a bit naughty from Paul, but then at the same time, Smolacek could have perhaps left a little bit more room. There was some tarmac on the outside there, and they both lost crucial time there. Fortunately, they've got their fast repair that they can use.
Well, I think Paul was just worried about making the corner, because we did see him juke back to the right just a little bit, but I don't think that was any sort of defensive move. I think he was just worried about keeping up maximum speed there and shooting for the pit lane at kind of as shallow an angle as he could. For sure,
he'll get a penalty as well, won't he?
Oh, for sure, yeah, he'll get a penalty there. I have to believe that Smolacek will get a penalty as well, although he has left the pits and is in 4th place, so I guess not. I guess his pit entry was all right. But Paul is now out of the car and possibly out of this race. So a real shame, as he was looking strong for a podium chance for sure.
Yeah, that's 2 races now where Paul's pit lane entry has cost him. He must have forgotten to come into the pits, I can only imagine, because he wasn't even close to making it in. And of course, he wanted quite a bit of fuel to spare as well when you go down the pit lane, because IRacing still uses quite a bit of fuel even when you are chuncing down at 60 kilometers an hour. Smolacek, unfortunately that instant, he would have been nicely in 4th place with a little bit of cushion behind. Instead, he's got a few very, very quick drivers right behind him. At the back of this pack is Stabe, who is actually going for a move on Ellis, and Stabe is up into 7th position. That's 1, so 4th place is possible here for Stabe, although Ellis is trying to come back. Smolacek just with a slight gap over Busech at the moment. He was very strong in race 1, and of course Smolacek finally has that damage fixed after carrying it from pretty much lap 1 onwards, so we might see an upturn in pace for him. So overtakes won't be easy in this pack. I think they're all quite evenly matched, but probably Stabe with an advantage over all of them.
Yeah, and an interesting thing to mention as far as team points is Viktor Smolacek is on the same team as Marcin Skripczak, I believe. They are the... Did I get that right? Shoot. He was with one of the front runners. I believe they are the DV1 Triton Racing Mint team. No, sorry, that's Peter Jagodinsky, who we saw finish well in decently in race number 1, but is nowhere to be seen in race number 2. So as far as team points are concerned, Smolacek is going to be carrying that DV1 Triton Racing Mint team, who is pretty far up in the team standings, as we see Jagodinsky is out of this race. So important for Smolacek to hang on to as much as he can here for the team standings. Did want to mention as well that we saw Maximilian Paul having issues with the fuel. He is one of our real-world racing drivers that, as Nessie goes for a shortcut there, I have to believe that'll be a slowdown if he didn't already serve it going through there. And that's another potential position for Dominic Stabe, as that brings him back into this battling group here. But Maximilian Paul is one of our real-world racing drivers. He drives in the ADAC GT Masters Series for, I believe, Lamborghini. So perhaps used to having someone else in charge of his fuel and just overshot it a little bit. But certainly he was close. He ran out just in the final couple of corners, but close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, as they say. Unfortunately for Maximilian Paul, he's now out of this race.
Yeah, has he? Yeah, he's not even out on circuits anymore, is he? Yet? Just had enough. Had enough. He could still get some. No, he's in 20th. He won't get any points. But get that. So yeah, terrible day for Paul. Lankenveld into the pits. That's a bit of an odd one. He has already pitted. So not quite sure why the T3 Motorsports driver has gone to the pits. Of course, T3. I've seen them in a couple of endurance series. I can see them trying this kind of sprint format as well. But Be Such ahead of Smaller Chick, holding on to, apologies, getting past, hasn't he? Smaller Chick there. So nice move there from Be Such, and he should be able to pull away, you would think, because Statman will be wasting no time trying to get past, because all of these guys will be thinking, oh, I could get a podium out of this one with Nessie only just ahead. I don't think Nessie's necessarily, and that wasn't meant to be a pun, it isn't necessarily faster than these drivers, so maybe he will be caught. Here is Stave. Took him a while to get past Ellis, but this is the move that he likes. Would he go for it? Oh, Statman saw it early, but well, at least Stave is getting him offline. Plenty of heavy braking areas around this part of the track. In fact, he's defending into every corner right now, Statman, as he goes for the move, and that is going to surely take them both off the course and moving through their stave, and he will be happy about that one. Bad news for Smaller Chick, because he's gone from 4th place down to 8th in a lap.
And Smaller Chick, of course, the innocent bystander there. I mean, that was a somewhat silly move from Statman, I have to say. It's not my place to comment on racing incidents. We'll leave that up to the stewards, but he was defending from Stave and ended up taking himself and another driver out of contention for a top 5, so that's a real shame. Not much to say about that one, just going for a move that wasn't on, I have to say, and unfortunate now for Smaller Chick, who's been set back even further from that. It's in 8th place behind Alex Ellis, who was beneficiary from that. But out front, Mirko Bortolotti is cruising. He's at least on the pace of Moritz Lehner. You can see the deltas at the bottom there. Lehner gains a bit, Bortolotti gains a bit. At the end of the day, neither of them is really making any sort of ground one way or the other. You see the chart there at the bottom of your screen showing the gap and how it's changed over time, and that looks pretty steady. Certainly not any one of these drivers any particular amount faster than the other, and with just 4 laps remaining, I don't think that we are going to see Moritz Lehner challenge for the win. Of course, you never know what can happen, and Mirko could certainly make a mistake, but as it stands right now, he is cruising just a little bit here. We see the battle for 4th now, Dominic Stave, and of course, you know, I'm left eating my words, because you said Dominic Stave could be in contention for a podium, and I said, I don't know. And here he is. If he can dispatch Be Such relatively quickly, he is going to be on the hunt for Marco Nessi, and I would have to believe that he is going to have a chance at that 3rd place.
Yep. I'll put my crystal ball away for the night. Also, it's dark. I would say this is evening now, because there's pretty much no sun being cast on the circuit anymore. So yeah, these headlights are being properly used, so quite nice up there. I despise the circuit pass. I don't despise it, to be fair, but I despise it when it's at night, because this circuit, of course, had night lighting a long time before all the other tracks, because you can see the floodlights around this track, and unfortunately the floodlights are really bad around this track, and so you can't see anything during the night. But in the evening, I will give it a pass. It is quite nice here at Motegi. Stave all over the back of Be Such. He's 2 seconds behind Nessie. What was his last lap time? In fact, Nessie pulled away. Nessie was really quick on that last time. Nessie was half a second faster than the 2 leaders. So if he hadn't have made that mistake, I think he would have been putting pressure on Lona right now. So shame for Marco, but he is up 11 places from his start, which is no mean feat. In fact, all of the top 6 are up 11 or more places. As Stave onto this move, he overtook the BMW of Ellis early run at this corner. He's going to overtake the BMW of B-Such as well, but still, B-Such is staying in there. You'll have the inside for the next corner. They're almost making contact down the straight. And Stave, oh, he got
he
hit.
does make contact. Oh
And
my goodness.
B-Such looked pretty aggressive, didn't he, down there? And they have made contact, and now he's trying to give up the place, but Stave is going to lose 2 places, might even be a third. A smaller chick will get one of the positions back. And it is now Statman who's back up into pole.
Well, and you know, props to Fabio B-Such, not for the move, of course, but for rescinding that position. You know, I think a lot of drivers can recognize when they've earned a position unfairly, and certainly that seemed to be the case there for Fabio B-Such. Just, you know, a move that was not going to work out. And we see, so he was showing his nose but tried to duck back in line, and in doing so was late on the brakes. And that's what sent Dominic Stabe around. So a shame for Stabe, as that's probably going to take him now out of podium contention. But good on Fabio for handing that position back, recognizing the somewhat unfair nature in which it was gained.
Stabe can still get 4th place out of this one. He's been knocked down a couple of times, but he's got 2.5 laps. But Statman does seem to be pulling away. And this is where Stabe is really good, though, through these S's. Maybe it's the Porsche's strongest point. I believe the Porsche is the best car to drive at the moment in the GTEs. It certainly was in the ARL GT Team Championship, and this is looking pretty nice for him. He's lining it up. Will he go for the inside? No, he wasn't close enough, but he's been given the place really, because Stave locked up his front brake, maybe too scared of the move from sorry, Ellis locked up his front brake, maybe too scared of the move from Stave, so drove it in too deep. And Stabe is up into 5th place. He's got 0.8 of a second to catch up to Statman. That should be enough time with 2 laps to go.
Yeah, even if it wasn't a wholly intentional move by Dominic Stabe, it was impressive nonetheless, and he handily takes that 5th place, as we see Smolarchek losing the position he was given back to B-Such. Just a bit of a lockup there into the 3rd to last corner, and he now finds himself back in 8th place where he was running. He's still within grasp, of course, of this group in front of him, and can certainly pick up pieces of any contact that we might see, as the leaders have taken the 2nd to last lap. Mirko Bortolotti still with 10 seconds in hand over Moritz Lehner, and Marco Nessi now looking like a pretty strong contender for that final podium position here in race number 2. While we're still a bit a ways from the finish, I do want to remind you that we are racing for charity here today. And throughout the entirety of this Lockdown Challenge Championship, it is the One World charity, and the donation link is at the top of your screen, the PayPal link you see, /OneWorldCharity20. Please, ooh, sorry, as Stabe just kicked the back end out a little bit. Please, if you can, and you haven't yet, or if you have already, go ahead and donate at the link you see on your screen. We would really appreciate it. But with a lap and a half of racing to remain, and Dominic Stabe is not content to settle for 5th place, as he is pushing hard to get back by Martin Statman, who really shook the rear out through turn number 5, but didn't lose too much ground on Statman here. He's not, I don't think, going to have a run into the hairpin here at turn number 10, but if he can get a good run down into turn number 11, he might have a chance before this lap is over. He's flashing the headlights. Just a friendly little flash to say, yeah, I'm here. I'd like through, please. Of course, Statman not in any way, shape, or form required to give that position to Stabe, but Stabe would like it nonetheless.
Yeah, and he wasn't really gaining down the straight there, was he? Its gap seemed to stay at about 0.3 of a second, and maybe you'll see a similar story here, 0.27, and yep. Well, Two-Face not even in the draft there, but he's actually losing time down the straight, so I wonder if he's running a little bit more drag. Is Stabe maybe running a little bit more rear wing, so that he's faster through the corners, and he sure is faster through the corners, and so far that has been enough for him to be able to make plenty of moves. He can take his time. There's plenty of overtaking opportunities at the end of this lap. There's 3 or 4 that he could do it at, so he doesn't have to get it done now, but this is looking very nicely for him as he did right into the draft. Will gain a couple of hundredths on the run. Statman defending right to the inside. It's a pretty narrow part of the circuit, this, so he should be alright. Stave is going the long way around. That's very risky, risking a quarter panel right there, and now he dips into the draft again, flat out through the right, and it's all about setting it up through the left and then the right, and then getting it on the brakes, as Stave has done so many times tonight.
Yes, as we head into just the last few corners here, Stabe running out of opportunities here on Statman, who is defending excellently. Certainly Stabe seems the quicker car, but having a quicker car doesn't mean a whole lot if you can't get the move done, and he hasn't been able to yet. Statman rather, defending once again into turn number 10. Is Stabe able to get the over-under? He is not. Just too long radius of a corner as we jump forward to Mirko Bortolotti, who is making a habit of running away with these races so that we don't show him all that much, but Mirko crosses the line with a little bit of a celebration and a slam on the brakes there in first place, but through turn number 11, it is still Statman ahead of Stabe. They've got 2 more corners left. Stabe sends it to the outside. He dives to the inside into the final corner, keeps it off of Statman. It's going to be a drag race to the line, although there is a little bit of contact there. And Statman is going to be your 4th place finisher ahead of Dominic Stabe. An excellent defensive work from Statman, not to discount the attempted overtake from Stabe there, which was mighty impressive. And good on those drivers to keep it relatively clean down through there. We jump to the battle for 15th place. This is Elvis Bonello and Roberto Pancaldi, who started on pole today for race number 2. It looks as though Pancaldi is going to have that position in hand over his teammate, but Elvis does get a run out of the final corner. It'll be a bit of a drag race here. Who is going to cross the line first? Pancaldi. Pancaldi will hold on to 15th place by the narrowest of margin. The top 25 are scoring points here in race number 2, so all of these drivers are in points-paying positions. In fact, every driver who finishes is going to be in a points-paying position, because 25th place is currently showing us Maximilian Paul, who has not been on track for quite a while. Here is Niels Langeveld, the last running car, although he's just disappeared. There he is again. So Niels will be the last car to cross the line on track. Not a perfect race by any means, but holding on to a points-paying position is a good, solid effort for Niels Langeveld. That'll wrap it up. We'll give you the rundown once everybody crosses the line, but somewhat commanding, if not quiet, performance from Mirko Bortolotti ahead of Moritz Lehner and Marco Nessi, your podium finishers for race number 2 here today. All of them up at least 10 places. In fact, everybody in your top 5 is up at least 10 places from the start, which is to be expected in a reverse grid race. You have your quick drivers coming through the field, but a solid effort by all those to avoid some of the opening chaos and make their way forward. So your race 2 winner here in the iRacing Lockdown Challenge round 4 is Mirko Bortolotti for GazX Racing Team. He finishes ahead of Moritz Lehner for Williams Esports and Marco Nessi rounding out your podium. Martin Statman comes home in 4th, and Dominic Stabe, after a slow start to the race, manages to scrape his way back to 5th place. And get some nice points for the Williams Esports team out of it. Alex Ellis comes home in 6th ahead of Fabio Bisuch. Victor Smolarczyk comes home in 8th place after starting towards the front of the reverse grid, similar for Nick Wustenhagen, who comes home in 9th. A solid effort to hold on to that place. His teammate Daniel Kramsky comes home in 10th ahead of Andrea Amann and Stefan Hiller, who comes home in 12th. Alex Fontana comes home 13th. Marcin Skripczak, who had a spin early on in the race, recovers to 14th place. Roberto Pancaldi comes home, rounding out your top 15. Elvis Bonello, who we saw having the battle with his teammate for FAC Auto, Pancaldi, comes home in 16th place by just a whisker. Ben Bunego comes home in 17th ahead of Nick Deisler for Motul Racing. In 19th position, we have Clemens Schmid, alongside his teammate Marcus Fallman, who comes home in 20th. Michael Bisuch comes home in 21st. Jan Lintz comes home 22nd ahead of Stefan Pellegrino and Niels Langeveld. Maximilian Paul, who did not finish the race, still manages to score a point, coming home in 25th place ahead of Gustavo Xavier and Ben Green. Lucas Eidelberg comes home in 28th. Giuliano Romagnuolo comes home in 29th ahead of Stefan Ebert. Jesko Kaczmarek and Piotr Jagodinsky, who all had trouble early on in this one. That about does it for race number 2. We've got a number of drivers waiting for an interview at the moment. I am going to grab our race 1 winner, Dominic Stabe, and our pole sitter, I should mention, who put in a commanding performance in race number 1. Dominic, how you doing?
Hey guys, obviously great after race 1. Race 2 was a little bit of a struggle, a lot of chaos, a lot of cars I had to avoid, so I lost quite a lot of time in the beginning, but that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we saw a bit of your, we'll get back to your commanding race 1 performance in a minute, but we saw your struggles on lap 1 in race number 2, getting held up a couple of times by some track blocking incidences. I have to say we were pretty impressed with your ability to get back up into the top 5. Obviously you had some pace here. Do you think the track particularly suited to the Porsche, or just you hit the setup right and it's a track you like?
I mean, not an easy question. I'm not too experienced in GTE, and there were some changes a few days ago in the build, but it seemed like the Porsche was going pretty strong around here. I mean, P1 and P2 in qualifying, or P1 and P3 was Porsche at least. So, and I guess my setup was pretty decent as well. Car was beautiful to drive, so I guess that played a role as well.
Yeah, you know, we mentioned there were changes just a couple of days ago. Of course, that doesn't make a huge difference to you guys because you only get a couple days notice on the track to do your practice and setup work in. How hard were you going on the practice and setup for this race in the last couple days, or were you just kind of, if not arrive and drive, just come into it with just a little bit of practice to get the setup where you want it?
To be honest, I had no idea. I never driven this track before, so I did my first laps yesterday evening. I drove 2 hours yesterday and just took the VRS setup, did a few clicks on my own to make it suit my driving style, and I was myself really surprised about the pace.
Well, I'm sure the other drivers don't want to hear that you just put a few laps in this track from having not driven it before, but an excellent shout out to our friends at VRS there as well, that you were able to go right from their setup with a few minor changes to really have some strong pace. I don't believe you set the quickest lap in race number 2, but you were ever so close. We also were remarking how much we enjoy the qualifying format of this series with the average of 3 laps. How stressful is it for you as the pole sitter for race number 1 to have that the knowledge in your head that one little mistake could throw off all the effort you put in 3 laps?
Yes, especially when you know you have the pace to put the car on pole, you're a little bit more nervous than usual. And I was nervous for sure, but I guess my 3 laps were quite okay. I'm sure I had a little bit of pace left, but it was a solid 3-lap run. Especially the last chicane was tricky. The second to last corner, the left-hander, where you cut a little bit. The corner, it was, of course, dangerous to get an off-track there. Only one off-track in one of the 3 laps would have put me at the back of the grid, so I had to be a little bit careful. But if you know you have the pace, you can be a little bit more careful.
Well, excellent, Dominic. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to here before we let you go?
Of course, shout out to my teammate Moritz, who asked me to join the series when it started. I would probably not be here without him. And of course, shout out to the team, to everyone who supports us, to our sponsors and stuff.
Fantastic. So congratulations once again to our pole sitter and race 1 winner and 5th place finisher in race number 2, Dominic Stabe.
Thanks, goodbye.
And now, Sam, I will grab our race number 2 winner. If you want to take the reins here, Mirko Bortolotti.
Yes,
Hi, everyone.
Yes, hello, Mirko. Oh, congratulations on the race win. We'll start off with the less successful race, but it was still an alright race one. Talk us through the start, if you can even remember. It feels like a while ago because you're in a very tight battle for second place with Martin out there. It didn't quite turn out well for you, and that sent you down the order. I mean, talk us through that instant.
Yeah, it was a little bit unlucky there with Martin. I think I had a really good start, turn 1, managed to push him a little bit into a mistake without contact and everything. He did a little mistake there, so I managed to get a position. Then he had a run on me down the bridge, going into the chicane, and took the outside line. Unfortunately, we touched on the exit, going into the next right-hander, and for him it was no consequence, but for me it was quite a big consequence because I dropped down to P8 or something. And after that, luckily I didn't hit the wall or didn't end up in the gravel, so my race was not completely compromised, but definitely it cost me a lot, and the chance to fight for the podium in race 1, because I think that Dominic was in a league of his own today, so there would not have been a chance to challenge him for the win. But still, podium would have been possible, and after that I was running in that group and decided to kind of undercut, because I was losing a little bit of time, couldn't pass the cars in front, and once actually the strategy was really good, but when I came out of the pits I ended up in a group of 5-6 cars, and after 3 corners they had a crash in front of me, and I had no chance to avoid, so my car was pretty much damaged for the rest of the race, and I had my pit stop done already, so no chance to repair, and just had to drive it home with a car that was 2 seconds a lap slower. And that was it.
Yeah, that was a tough one. The good news was that it did better your position for the reverse grid. You started in 15th place and you were storming through the order. I believe you gained 11 places on the first 2 laps. I may be wrong there, but how was it carving your way through the order? Because some of the other front runners had issues, but you seem to be able to get through it all.
As you said, I mean, that was not the goal to have a better position for race 2. Definitely not, because the big points or important points are given for race 1 as well. And at the end of the day, I started from P15. I wasn't quite happy with that position because you're basically in the middle of the sandwich, and everything that happens is most of the time happens around that position. So it was tricky. I was on the inside, had a good start, managed to gain, I think, 1 or 2 spots straight away on in turn 1, and positioned really well for the next corner, and managed to get some other spots. So I think I survived it, didn't have damage on the car, which is crucial in a reverse grid race like ours. And at the end of the day, it worked out really well. The pace was good, and I managed to get past the other cars that were in front of me at the beginning of the race. Max Paul was really fast as well behind me. He had a really good race as well, but unfortunately he ran out of fuel, and so otherwise it could have been a 1-2 for the team. But it is how it is. I think it was still a strong race, and I'm happy with the second race with the win, obviously.
Absolutely. So far we've had 4 rounds of this championship. Which races are you preferring? Are you preferring the supercars races or these GTE events?
Well, to be honest with you guys, I like the mix. I think it's what makes it interesting, because doing it only on GTEs or only on V8 would be quite specific. Maybe a driver is feeling more comfortable on one of those cars, and it would give him a big advantage. I like the mix, the fact that in V8s we run a fixed setup, so it's the same setup for everyone. Really packed racing, and then obviously the GTE kind of more realistic race compared to what we do in the real world, where you can really develop your setup a little bit, work with your team and stuff like that. So I really like the mix of driving GTEs and V8s. And yeah, in the past we used to do GT3s as well and other categories, so that's definitely not what it's gonna be for the future 100%. We are not sure about it. There might be changes coming, so we always try to spice it up a little bit and make it interesting.
Definitely. Well, big thanks for having a chat with us, Mirko. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to?
Well, to One World Charity. At the end of the day, we should not forget that we are doing this for a good cause. We would like to do a shout out to all drivers competing here with us since day one. So it's really cool what's going on, and keep supporting One World Charity. If you like the show, obviously we are happy about any donation you can give, and yeah, looking forward to the next event, to the next round, and Happy New Year to everyone. Obviously, we're coming to an end of the year, so Happy New Year. Take care and stay safe.
Awesome. Big thanks for having a chat with us. Mirko, we'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys. Goodbye.
Mirko Bortolozzi there, your race 2 winner.
Very good, and I am going to grab the runner-up in race 2, Moritz Lehner. How you doing?
Hey guys, doing fine.
Awesome. So, obviously, I've only been covering this championship since Daytona, but you seem to be making a habit of close but no cigar as far as the win is concerned. You finished, I believe, 4th in race number 1, 2nd in race number 2. Certainly, you've got the pace. Do you think a win is around the corner for the upcoming rounds, or are you content to just rack up the big points from these podiums?
As long as I stay in front in the championship, I don't care about the win, to be honest. Like, I won a couple of championships already without a single race win, so maybe that's a good thing. But yeah, the pace was not really there today because I don't know if it was my driving, the setup, or just simply the car that was terribly slow. Maybe a mix of everything because I just started practicing yesterday night, and I guess that's not the best thing to do for a race like this. But it somehow works out every time. Like, first race for sure, without the pace you don't have a chance to compete at the very top. But I seem to be very lucky in the second race all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we heard from your teammate Dominic, who thanked you for getting him into the series when it started, because obviously it's worked out pretty well for him as far as the wins are concerned there with the win in race number 1. Are you regretting that now? Do you kind of wish you hadn't told him about it, so
No,
you would
it's
have been
fine.
able to sneak in some additional points?
No, that's good. He's collecting points for the team, which is obviously also nice. And as long as he's not a threat for me in the championship, I won't have a bad word to him.
Yeah, fantastic. I was obviously just kidding. I'm sure you are quite happy to be racing with your teammate here, but certainly some strength shown. Obviously, you said you didn't really have the pace, but it didn't really show on the timing stands for us. I mean, your qualifying wasn't, standout performance like your teammates was, but still a top 5, and moving forward in both races for sure. Is there a secret to avoiding the carnage that we've seen kind of claim some of the other top performers, or is it just you drive the way you know how to drive, and however it works out?
I think it's like, especially the second race is a lot of looking 2 corners ahead and see what everyone else does. If there's already like a crash happening in front of you, then you try to go off the throttle a little bit earlier and give you a little bit more safe space to avoid accidents. But a lot of stuff is also just pure luck to not get collected.
Excellent, Moritz. Do you have anyone you'd like to give a shout out to before we let you go here?
Yeah, I want to give a last shout out to the team Williams Esports, because this has been my very last race with the team. I hope they are doing well in the future. I'll end the series with the team though, so the next races are still going to be with Williams Esports, but yeah, by the new year I won't be with the team anymore. So shout out to the team.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you, Moritz, and we will definitely see you next time out. But congratulations once again, your race 2 runner-up, Moritz Lehner.
Thanks.
Got a couple more interviews for you, Sam. I'm going to grab our 3rd place finisher in race number 1, Fabio Bisach.
Yes, Fabio Bisach, 3rd place in race 1, and then 7th place in race 2, one of our highest point scorers tonight. Congratulations, Fabio. That race 1, it all seemed to happen in front of you, and you ended up in 3rd place. That must have been a very satisfying result.
Yeah, it was a good race. Race 1 was all clean. I choose to pit earlier than everyone else because, yeah, I had some problems with the pit entry. That's a bit you know, I don't know what pit entry that is, but yeah, after it was all clean in the race.
Yeah, it was a nice finish. I believe you were battling with Lona, weren't you, in those
Yeah.
closing stages in race 1? That got really tight, almost a little bit over aggressive from you two, but you just hung on at the line.
Just drive clean. It deserves more if you're driving aggressive. I think Moritz was a bit too wide at the turn, and he touched the grass, and then he loses the car. I don't know. And then I said, okay, thank you for the position. So yeah.
Yeah, it was a really good finish. And then the start of race 2, I mean, I may be wrong on this, but it looked like you went backwards at the start of race 2. It looked like you were down to like 27th off the start. I mean, what was going on at that first few corners?
Yeah, first thing was reverse grid. I don't know, I started 20th or something like that, and the start was very terrible from all of the drivers. I choose to go outside to get no contact. But after turn 3 or 4, I think Moritz touched someone, or I don't know. I think that was a yellow Porsche. I need to see first what that was. Yes, the yellow one was touched, and he's going backwards again, and I choose to go to the grass side because to get no contact, and yeah, then I lose some places. That was not very good.
Yeah, but you still managed to get back up into 7th place in the end. That seemed like a tight battle between you know, Alex Ellis, Smaller Chick, and Stabe, and whatever. Was it mainly clean out of you guys? What was your perspective from that battle? It was certainly entertaining to watch.
I think it was all clean. Then after the happen, I spun out Dominic, and yeah, and I said give him back the position or let him through because he was in front of me and I touched him in the rear. But the problem was each of the drivers, so these others, so Alex and I don't know the other name from the driver, I think Martin was it. They was still behind in the front of Dominic, and I said, why let him pass, you know? And I could pass them or let them by at the last lap. That was I thought that every time after when I did it, but yeah, then I was a bit mad about it. Yeah, but it's okay. P7,
Yes.
P7, it's okay. I took many points now today. That's good. Maybe the next race is V8. Gonna be a V8. So let's see.
Definitely. Well, congratulations, Fabio. Is there anyone you'd like to give any thanks to?
Yes. Big shout out to our sponsor, Howard Designs, who made our new liveries now from the M4 GT3, and I think Lambo. Now not that Lambo, but he's now our new sponsor. And yeah, thanks to Mirko to do the races, and I'm honored to drive here, and honestly pretty well. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having a chat with us, Fabio, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, see you.
Fabio B. Such there, your 3rd place finisher in race 1, and then 7th place finisher in race 2.
Yep, and I think we have one more interview, Sam, if he is able to. I'm showing him. Marco, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi all.
Excellent. So our final podium finisher in race number 2, Marco Nessi. How you doing?
I'm fine, I'm good. I'm super happy to be here, part of this super event. It's such a good thing.
For sure. We've we've talked a lot and heard a lot talked about from the drivers we've talked to about the quality of the field here. So surely quite content for you to be finishing on the podium with this group.
Yeah, for sure. It was for sure not easy. There are a lot of big names, let's say, and most of all, I'm not used to GTE anymore because I'm driving in different categories. So I'm super happy about this.
Absolutely. Obviously, race number one not quite as high up as race number two, but that's okay. We saw your we saw your run in race number two on the way up through the field. You kind of had a bit of a gap and then went back through the grass a couple of times and brought yourself right back into the battle. But it seemed like your pace was solid enough to keep that podium position in hand.
Yeah, I was trying to give my all. I was trying to give everything, and race 2 was way better than race 1. It's been way better than race 1. Race 1, I had some problem with quali. I don't know why my lap time hasn't been registered. I really don't know. That's why I started from very far behind, but I had a lot of fun. Unfortunately, there has been some problems, some contacts I have been involved in, and in race 2 I have been luckier than race 1, so I could have managed better.
Yeah, absolutely. I forgot you had started from the back in race number 1, so really to get up to 12th is pretty impressive, I must say. But certainly, yeah, it kind of for sure set you kind of in the middle of the chaos in race number 2 with all the wrecks going on around you. But you did an excellent job of working your way forward to get towards the front of the field there. Was there a trick to avoiding everything, or do you think it just came down to luck today?
I was trying to follow Mirko because he was moving very well. So my strategy was to follow him, to stay with him, and he picked the right places, the right line. So that's why I could have managed that. I must say thanks to Mirko because he showed me the line.
Well, excellent. Yeah, it certainly was a good choice to follow Mirko because he ended up with a pretty strong result in race number 2. But Marco, do you have anyone you'd like to give a shout out to before we let you go here?
Not really. Just I enjoyed this event, so I hope to have the opportunity to race again.
Fantastic.
Because I'm here to. Mattia Drudi should have raced this race, but unfortunately he couldn't, so I jumped in.
Gotcha, Marco. Well, thank you so much, and congratulations once again on your podium in race number 2, Marco Nessi.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Well, that'll do it for us here today. A couple of very exciting races, a bit wreck happy towards the beginning, but I think once everyone got sorted out, we saw some really excellent racing, some staunch defending from guys towards the front, and some really excellent battles throughout the field. Maybe a bit of a runaway winner in both races, but that's okay. It happens. I certainly enjoyed what I was watching today. Did you, Sam?
Yeah, sure did. Yeah, it was some really good defense out there, as you were saying, some staunch defense, and yeah, some clean driving as well from the drivers, particularly that battle for that 4th position in the end of the race 2 was really fantastic to see. And yeah, whilst we did see some runaway winners, they were certainly well-deserved wins. So yeah, congratulations to those guys. And still, the championship is well on. I mean, I think Lona's got a slightly bigger championship lead now, but it's still very much up for grabs in the last couple of rounds.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to bringing these last couple of races to you here on Apex Racing TV. But that'll do it for us tonight. A couple of great races. Congratulations once again to our race winners, Dominic Stabe and Mirko Bortolotti. Please, if you haven't yet and you're planning on it, go ahead and donate to the One World charity. You can still see the PayPal link on your screen at the bottom of the box there. But for all of us here at Apex Racing TV, I have been Tyler Newitt alongside Sam Fitzpatrick and Marco Barbanera, and we will see you next time.